Hello and good evening. Welcome everyone to the Business of Property. I'm your host, Cheryl Leong from Property Development Australia. I begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet and pay my respects to elders past and present. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. At the Business of Property, we interview superstar guests in the property development space that share their expertise, their deals, and their stories to help empower, build, and grow our community of property developers. So hello there, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube land, and anyone watching the replay. Give me a shout out if you're here with us today in the comment section. Excellent. So those of you who watched last week's episode of the Business of Property, we had part one of investing and developing in childcare centres. So this week is part two, and we're inviting again the amazing Hong Nolan, who will share with us on how to find, last week she shared with us how to find feasible sites in the market demand. And this week we're going to be talking more about the planning and what to look for in the right attributes to look for in land. So without further ado, I will ask Hong to join us. Come on down to the Business of Property dance floor, Hong. How are you?
Not too bad. And you, Cheryl?
Very, very well. Welcome again, Hong. And last week we got some really, really good comments around really understanding how to find feasible sites and understand the market demand for childcare centres. And this week we're going to dive further into actually looking at the nitty-gritty of the planning and what to look for in the land. So tell us a little bit about the summary of what we can expect today.
Excellent. Thank you, Cheryl. Hi everyone. Thanks for watching. Firstly, so today, as Cheryl explained, we specialize in childcare and healthcare social infrastructure areas, and today my focus will be about how to navigate a planning system, understanding the constraints around the neighborhood character, the on-site, off-site, each amenity that you should watch out when you design or when you go through the town planning applications, and also understand, the land attributes, where the site should be located, and what matters to operators when they choose the location. And certainly we will go through some case studies about what's the good designs that operators are looking for. So mainly three components we will be talking about today.
Yeah, I'm excited about understanding the design side of things because it's not just around putting a block of, a property there. It's understanding whether it flows, it's got enough open space for children to obviously interact and play as well. So I'm really excited to dive into this a little bit more. We've got a few people here saying hello to you. Thank you. Please pop in your comments or questions that you have for Hong along the way as well. So let's dive into it, Hong.
Excellent. All right. Give me 1 second. Can you see my screen, Cheryl?
I can see it absolutely clearly.
Excellent. All right, let's start it. So before we talk about the design and the land attributes, and also the design, the architectural design component of it, I think I just want to quick capture what's the drivers in childcare investment and how you define successful investment. So that will give a foundation to the following discussions. Some of this one could be covered in our part one section about the market opportunities, but I think it's important to set up the foundation for the further discussions here. So it's kind of refresh as well from part one.
Fabulous.
So the drivers. So investing in childcare centre is becoming more popular for various reasons. Firstly, childcare services are considered essential social services, and it's a growing industry as a result of solid population growth, steady increase in labor force participation rates. So that could be male and female, largely in female. And also importantly, the changing lifestyle patterns of Australians. So there's various factors here. I have the bullet point here. The continuously increasing government funding and support, and also the lower capital requirements, largely the land acquisition and the building construction. For operators, for any new centers that they are going to open, you are looking at 100,000 to 150,000, even more, depending as an initial setup, and depending on the size of center as well. So it's a pretty heavy investment for childcare center operator to get in. So they are very careful about where they choose. But anyway, so that's a kind of like lower capital requirements for the investors and developers. And also, as I said before, increasing female labor participation rates. And importantly, in childcare centers are often built in a residential area. So at the end of the life cycle, you could redevelop site for housing, medical, or another use, NDIS and other uses. One of the attractiveness here is long-term leasing agreement. Usually it exceeds 15 years plus two options, and with annual fixed growth rates, 3%. So that is really give much greater certainty and financial security for investors. And often, if you get a tenant, that's really good risk profile. You won't go away. And strong building depreciation. And because most of childcare centers are specially designed and will be strongly depreciated from a tax benefit perspective.
So Hong, one of the questions I have, why are operators not developing themselves? Or is it more common for operators to, I'll rephrase that, is it more common for operators to develop themselves, or really more common for them to lease out a location where someone has developed?
It depends. I think mostly they like to lease. The reason for that, because operating a new center is really risky proposition unless they have a really good financial backup. Because you think about it, I'm based in Melbourne, but I do work in other states. But in Melbourne, you look at it, you acquire the land, 3 mil for 1,500 square meter land, depending where you are, could be even more if in the inner area. And then plus the construction on top of it. So it's very heavy infrastructure you're putting on. Right. And so for operators, sometimes can be really risky proposition to build themselves and also to operate. So we do work with a lot of childcare developer and operators often. And you do have a clients in that space. They just want to build and develop. But the issue is that if you are renting, if the operators are just a tenant, and when during the COVID period, so they're still paying the same rate or some kind of smaller discounted rate to the landlord, if the landlords are very nice people. But their business will be, they really had to work really hard to make profit. But if you have a lot, if you have a lot of cash and you can cash in or have taken less long when you build it, you probably don't have to hit that 70% of benchmark that we are talking about. So last week, a national childcare operator, they're independent, they're not like GA, that kind of big guys.
Sure.
And he is national developer and childcare operator. And he said to me, some of his centers, because he acquired a site so early on, so he does not have a much repayment or commitment. And so he only can, as long as he reaches 50% of the occupancy rate, he's fine. But if you're just getting to the market and you're paying big dollars per child per year,
yes,
and that can be really risky for the operators. So they'll be very careful. So every time when the leasing agency, they put out a lease on the website, and our operator will call us, hey, got this site here. What can we do with it? Can you check where's the market for it? I don't want to commit to anything that is not available. But often the feedback we got is, we got so many sites they are looking at. Everyone trying to do a childcare center, but we don't have money to do every needs assessment, market assessment to confirm the business viability. Why
Yes.
they do a needs assessment to support the sale or the lease that make our life much easier? But often people don't understand it. But the need market understand the market requirements not just for the operators, but also for your investment developers, because you are spending $100,000 potentially just to get to the planning permit. And in the end, you may or may not find operators depending if it's crappy market conditions.
Yeah.
So that's
Is it right?
highlighting.
Yeah. So we had a conversation with a gentleman, David Power, and he was talking around a prop tech, and it was one of the things that he mentioned, and I was pretty sure it was childcare centers. He was saying that a lot of the childcare center operators are, because it's easier to get approval when there's not a lot of people around in a greenfield area. All right, so there's less sort of pushback from neighbors if you're building in a greenfield area, but it's not really developed as yet. But it didn't quite make sense to me, because I was like, wouldn't you get approval when there's lots of people around? Or is this what you're seeing as well, Hong? Does this make sense to you?
I can see where he's coming from. Yes,
Yeah.
because when you apply for childcare center permit, one of the things is that if you have neighbors around you, you often get pushed back for various reasons: noise, traffic, overshadowing issues, depending on what you're proposing, right? But if there's nothing there in the greenfield area of farmland around you, or the building under construction, no, actually, who's
Yeah,
going to
no one's gonna say anything. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So from that a process perspective, yes, he's right. I agree with you. But also means that in the greenfield area there could be a good demand for it, because the new family household, young families that are moving in, they need the services somewhere. But again, you don't know how quickly those
That's
families
right.
will be moving in. So the
Yes.
market perspective now, you don't know how quickly those families are moving in,
Yes.
and how many of those families are moving in, how many children are going to move in, and how many of those children are going to use your childcare centers,
Yes.
or
Yes.
daycare centers. Because bear in mind, there's maybe the family daycare, maybe preschools there, maybe just grandparents helping out, just mom and dad, they can look after their children. So not every child goes to long day care, and not every child goes to long day care in a full-time capacity. So it's a business of, you need to understand, at what point, how many children will be, how many places will be required. Would that give the security to the business?
Yeah. So it sounds like from a planning risk management perspective, that's probably a good way to do it. But from an actual financial feasibility point of view, it's quite risky, because you don't know the makeup of the families and the type of clientele, or the type of children, or the makeup that's going to end up being there. Is that what you're
I think you are right in a way that it is overall in the greenfield area is a much easier proposition than in the established areas, in general speaking, because you kind of like know it's young families moving, but how many you don't know. But in the established areas, because there's so much competition there, and you need to be more careful where you choose. But having said that, we do know there's certain pockets are very undersupply.
okay?
You need to find out exactly where it is. And again, in the sense for the identical building, similar site attribute, but in different location, one's with stronger demand, less supply, and one's the average or even oversupply. So the rate you're getting is very different.
Interesting.
Yeah, but overall, yes, in the greenfield area, because of less complaints there, so could be an easier sale to get a planning permit. But having said that, Whittle City Council, for example, in Melbourne, they require a market assessment to support every town planning application for childcare centres.
And
Because they
with the fit out of the actual childcare centre, who pays for that? Is it the developer, the owner of the building, or is it the operator?
A mix, depending on the agreement they are getting.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not really not similar to sort of commercial property where, or is it similar to commercial property where you still have all the outgoings and utilities that are paid for by the childcare centre operator?
Yeah, so there's a plus outgoing. Childcare Centre operator will pay for that. Yeah, but in terms of fit out, it's a mix depending on the agreements between the two parties. And some childcare centre are premium products. They don't want to go with a low basic quality, and so there's a lot of negotiation. The room for negotiation is very hard to say.
Okay, we've got a question here. Who does the assessment for demand for childcare needs for an area? I believe
we
there you go.
Yeah, so we can do the childcare needs assessment for Australian wide. Yeah, so anywhere in Australia we can do it. Yeah, not a problem. Some people they think they can do some basic themselves. They say, oh, we know what to do. We know this area coming, lots of people coming in, but do you know how many places actually will be required? That's a question, $1 million question.
Yeah. Is there such thing as the sweet spot for the number of places in a childcare centre, or it really depends?
Yes, they are. For long day care centres, you need to have somewhere 70, 75 plus places in order to make the centre viable. Anything too low, like 60, we come across some centres 60. The lowest we saw was 28. But that's a very old center, and they are struggling badly. They are even taking before and after school care kids.
Okay.
And so you need to find somewhere 75, 80 plus.
Right. And how do you find a childcare operator who wants to operate in your development area or site?
Say again.
How do you find a childcare operator who wants to operate in your development area or site? So basically, how do you find a childcare operator that will end up being, the business that leases your development?
Yeah, we don't. So we recommending, because our business is more consultancy, right? So we don't do a leasing or sales. So one thing that I would recommend, you just go with a real estate agent, ask to get them on board and do a sales or leasing campaign. But if you are not that big, sometimes we ask around a little bit, but that's not our core business at all.
Okay, understood. I know we've got a few more things. I've railroaded your presentation, so please go ahead, Hong.
No, that's all right. So defining successful investment, and we talk about the investment in the business. We touch on that. We talk about investment in acquiring the site and then doing the development and getting the land ready and the development ready for the operation. But in childcare centers, the key is to secure an operator. An operator wants to know the business is viable or not. And once you get everyone's happy, and then you will expect a good financial returns. The three influencing factors we see, and those three are: one, market opportunities and business viability, and secondly, the land attributes. What's the land size? What's access issues? What's nearby? The complaints that we talked about before, right, Cheryl? And we also talk about the town planning requirement, the zoning, the building height, any restrictions on your title. And these three components actually applies to all sorts of development that I have listed here: housing, subdivision, NDIS, medical, retail, everything. And in our part one, we focus on the market intelligence assessment, feasibility, and today we are going to focus on the land attribute and town planning requirements. Let's quickly remind you or brief you on the market opportunities here. We are looking at who will be using this center, this service here. We talk about the local resident, or we talk about the workers. We're looking into the socio-economic status, the cultural backgrounds, the growth potential, and how do the existing centers perform? Do they make profit? Can the market support additional services without significantly compromising the business viability of other centers nearby? And what's the growth potential? Catchment population, the workers. How many places can be supported? We talked about before. That's a very critical, because that will inform your center size, and you can avoid any under or over development. You can capture the market better, and through the design, even diversify your risk, even walk away. That could be another option from this development. So that is that, and then covered in part one. And today, in land attribute, we talk about is the operators are looking at main road visibility. They want to have the catchment, not just the local residents, but also the passing traffic. And secondly, they are looking at some location that close to schools, close to shopping shops, close to employment centers. So any destinations that can attract the people, they will be keen to look at. And even today, I was on site with a beautiful independent childcare operator at her center, and her center is next to the church. So there was interactions between the church and the center, which is a very interesting design. And they have some kind of like cafe set up as a part of center that can service local people nearby on top of their day-to-day operation. That was a very interesting model that she presented to us. Anyway, the third one, we're looking at easy access. So if we don't want the site, it's often the centers ideally to be a corner site because it's easy access, but you don't want to too close to the intersections or some kind of area that they may restrict your access or power pole, for example.
Yeah.
And the centers, the land area we're looking at, minimum 1,500 square meters for 1 or 2 story centers. So 1,500 square meters, you're looking at single story, maybe 60, 65 children places. But that's a bit smaller than the sweet spot that we just talked about before, 75 to 80. So you're still looking at double story. But if you're only looking for single story, you are probably looking at 2,000 square meters land. There's a very little appetite for 3-story centers at this stage, purely because of the operational cost to manage the centers over 3 stories. Town planning, the zoning, and pretty much all the residential zones supporting you can do a childcare centers pretty much across all the residential zones, but often you don't want to go in the middle of the residential estate. You want to have a main road access, main road exposure that we talked about before. And often council has its own policy about non-residential uses in the residential zone. So you have to be careful in terms of where you select. Often they want to direct those commercial uses close to shopping centers, for example, or stations, close to stations or the schools. So that kind of activities. So there will be some local policies directing where the users should go for non-commercial, non-residential uses in the residential area. Access car parks is often a major considerations in childcare centres because council is, generally speaking, in Victoria, is pretty strict with that. For example, if you will have propose a centre with 100 licensed places, you are looking at 22 on-site car parking spaces. You may get some parking reductions depending where you are located, but under the Victorian planning scheme, the rule is that 100 places centre, you need to have 22 on-site car parking spaces. We touch on the noise. That could be a concern. And landscaping. Landscaping, generally speaking, is important in childcare area, particularly in the area where is heavily vegetated or some kind of people passionate about nature. Yeah. So landscaping could be, we came across a few sites that got refusal just because the communities had they signed the petition and they want to retain their character of leafy neighborhood.
Yeah.
And the beautiful overlooking, overshadowing, that's a standard planning consideration to make sure the building fit to the character. So the planning, the difference between the planning and building in this area is planning is more about outside your building. We set up the pyramid, we set the design requirements for the design, say that's your setback, that's how far you can push the boundary, and that's where you can go in. So set up the design requirements. And the building designer or architect, they will working within a framework and make sure that will work within the framework, basically. So that's a difference between planning and the architectural design consideration.
Okay, so what you're saying is the planning requirement, similar to, I guess, any of the other types of development, is understanding what the regulations are and the restrictions or the framework of what you can do, and then architecturally will be understanding, where particular areas of breakout areas or open space, dining space needs to be.
Yes, that's correct. Because we planning, we set up the framework, the footprint, basically where the building can go in. Within the building, the architect need to make sure the design is compliant. So it's two requirements. We can touch it in the next slide, but basically the architect will have focus on the function of the building, the layout, and also secondly, the building need to comply with the design requirements. We're talking about, say, the clear space, internal indoor clear space, 3.3 square meters per child as a minimum. Outdoor space, 7 square meters outdoor space per child. Those are minimum requirements you need to meet. And often you need to make sure you get a good architect, you calculate it correctly. Otherwise, you make it a design, you make it a town planning permit for 100 places. But if they miscalculate the space, it's very tight space, you end up maybe 98 or 95. And what that means that you're losing, I don't know, the area where the rates difference $3,000 to $5,000 per child per place per year, right? You're losing how much money you're calculating here. Yeah, that's a big dollars. So in architecting, to make sure they calculate it correctly, they make sure they design well the functional space. And then they need to make sure they reduce the operating cost and the risk to operators. And if you design well, and you will attract a much greater interest from operators.
Okay. So really important then that you find an architect who really understands how to maximize the number requirements with the space that they have to work with.
That's correct. Even though we are not architect, but we have seen so many design. We work with operators a lot, so we understand the end users' requirements, and we fit into the design process. That's we see we can help the clients to secure a better result for them. And often, not every architect. We go through some case studies, but not. This various level of services here I'm talking about. Yes.
Yeah, I'm keen to understand what makes good childcare centre design.
Yes. Sorry, say again.
So I'm keen to see what makes good childcare centre design and what that looks like, what the layout looks like. I think we're going to go through that very soon.
Excellent. Shall I go through it now, Cheryl?
Yeah, please go ahead.
All right, let's do this one. Okay, I got 2 floor plans here. This is the first floor plan. Can I ask you and the audience here, happy for you to leave a note? And what do you see in this center? So let me give you some context here, right? I purposely blocked out the street names because it's purely for case study purpose. Don't take that personal. Don't discover or circulate that to the much broader audience. But so this is a case study basically for the So the street, can you see my mouse here, Cheryl?
Yes.
Okay, so this is street frontage and facing north, and the entrance coming this way. It's a double-story center, and we are looking at the ground floor. And there's car park to the north over this section. My mouse is. The entrance is coming off here. You can see reception, you can office, kitchen. If you can't see the name, the address, the things well. And some the lift, a staircase and lift, some disabled toilets here. And you got a play area, room 1, room 2, and room 3. And you got that all 3 rooms shares one backyard here. So the service along here, the water tanks here. So that is the layout.
And how many children was this proposed for?
So this one, because we're only looking at the ground floor, the up floor is very different thing. So let's just talk about the ground floor, how many children at the ground floor. The room 1 where my mouse is got 12 children, and then room 2 got 12 children, room 3 got 16 children. This is just the ground floor are purely for younger kids, 1 to 3 years old.
Yeah. I mean, I personally looking at this looks like it's the layout looks a little bit cramped. Like it doesn't feel like it has a good flow, particularly where sort of that kitchen area is, because I'm assuming this center is probably preparing meals for the kids. I think a lot of them do now, like lunch and breakfast and so on. And so I feel like that even that thoroughfare between the kitchen might cause a lot of people, like that little area. I find that's a really awkward area, because you've got people coming in and out of the center, and then you've got people coming in and out of the kitchen with food and so on. I can imagine there's going to be lots of little accidents that happen there. I don't know. That's
very good point. Yeah.
And I mean, the office and reception, that's okay. Again, I feel like that entrance and reception, I'd almost prefer to have the entrance and the reception almost facing the entrance, so that it's a lot more welcoming. But it just feels a little bit cramped. So then to the play area. I haven't been to childcare centres for a while, but I get the general sense that I would like it to be more open. There's a bit more openness and connectedness between the rooms in some way. Like if there was a need to connect the rooms, again, I can't remember the rules around childcare centres. More of that openness. And where are kids sort of sleeping? Baby sleeping area. Yeah. Play area. Yeah. More open doors. More open doors, like more openness. Everything I'm saying is like I want it to be more open. That's it. I don't know if anyone else has any other comments. Comments there.
Any comments here? We got here, Cheryl?
Well, someone says I have with my toddler. So I said I haven't been to a childcare centre for a while. And in saying that, the preschool that my kids went to, it was very open plan. It was beautiful. It was a small preschool, so it wasn't a long day care centre, but it was a small centre, and there are trees everywhere, and it was very natural and open. So this is quite unusual to me when they've got so many sort of walls and sections. But what in your expert review, Hong, what would you say?
Yes. Firstly, I think I strongly agree with you that the kitchen is at a very awkward position because the kitchen is supposed to service all the rooms, but when you come out and in, you hit with the traffic that with the parents dropping the kids off, the children running around to get into the rooms. That is accidents happening, could happen all the time. That is very dangerous. Secondly, there's all the rooms at room 1, because this is the full path, pedestrian path, so it's the end of the play area potentially. So there's a car park. Can you see my mouth? So there's not a lot of room. There's no room for play area 1 to come out directly to. So for the student, for the kids in the room 1 has to walk through the room 2 in order to get to the play yard.
Yeah.
That is not desirable. And also in terms of facility sharing here, they got a walls in between. You can't really share between the room. The children are not feeling home in the feeling that they cannot move around, but they're constrained. So that's your area, that's my zone, that's your zone, basically.
Yeah.
So and lastly, as I agree with you, there's no sense of hub in the ground floor, and they're all walkway corridors. And in the center, you treat the children as a human being. There may be somewhere they can mingling around,
interact,
interact, and the parents may want to have somewhere to sit and have a chat. But there's no such space in the ground floor to facilitate that.
Yeah. It just seems like, you see a long corridor and there's just doors. Stick them in here, stick them in there.
Exactly.
See you later.
Exactly. But having said that, this was approved. This was approved by the council. But the agent who tried to list this site took a long time to get someone on board, and that one is quite junior in the operation, trying to step into the market basically as an operator. But experienced operator was not very keen on this layout.
I can understand.
If you change that, you lose half the side of the room. Basically, you think about it. If you want to make that work, you lose at least 10 children on the ground floor.
So would that not, from a planning perspective, I'm sure there design guidelines to ensure that there's more of that space between sort of the kitchen and the thoroughfare, obviously from a health and safety perspective. Aren't those guidelines in place, Hong, or does it really just depend on council looking at it and going, ticks the number of,
No, that's not. So most of the town planning firms you deal in the market at the moment, they don't really look at internal. They don't look at internal designs because, as I explained, as I said before, planning is more about setting the boundary to the client. Say, I want a mini car park. I want the building step that far. I want the building to be that to protect off-site amenity. That's all they care about as from a planning perspective. In terms of building inside, there's more architectural design consideration. As far as the guideline goes, it's more about the ratio. We're talking about the educator to children ratio. We talk about how many square meters, indoor 3.3, minimum 3.3 square meters, clear space for per child. We talk about minimum 7 square meters per child for the outdoor. But in terms of calculation, there's a lot of little Hindi area that we need to be careful. For example, you may get a permit for 100 places. I was dealing with another site, and I flicked that to my good architect I'm dealing with a lot. And then he came to me and said, "Oh, be very careful. The space is really tight. They use millimeters in the calculation there. And then there's an area they haven't calculated in. It's really tight. If anything goes wrong a little bit, that means that you drop one child number.
Yeah, right.
And then you means you drop somewhere between 5 to 8,000 in the expensive areas. In Sydney, right? You talk about $180 maybe $200 per
Yes.
day in some
Yeah.
places.
Yeah.
And that's big coins. So you don't want it to be cut that fine line. But everyone has different budget. You may just go, work with what you can get, but you need to be very careful when you do the calculation, the space. You don't want to go
Yeah.
too tight.
Yeah. And I even look at the play area and it seems quite small to me considering how many
Because
children
they
there might be.
calculate, they include all the rubbish. Sorry, all the sideway area. There may be a kind of play area in a way, even though it's only 1 meter, 1.5 meters. So they
The
include
kids
every
playing
part.
near the rubbish. It's fine. They like that.
Sorry, my apologies, not the words. Just a water tank. They made some usable space there. They calculate that
Yes.
in.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it's quite tight. There's not much room to move
Mm.
around it, to be honest,
Yeah.
in this design.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine kids on little scooters and pushing things around. It just be slamming into each other. Yeah.
Very small.
This doesn't look ideal to me. So what is a more better design space?
Okay, I show you the better design. No, that's not perfect. That's better because even operators, every operator has different requirements sometimes. So you better get operators on board before you start the building permit process. Because if anything you need to alter, you can alter after town planning permit. Because you need to get a town planning permit to give operators assurance that you are serious about this business, right? But you need to make sure there's enough room within your design that can be altered to cater for the needs of the operators who is coming on board. So you don't do a fine cut here. So anyway, so the better design. Okay, let's go through that.
Okay, here we go.
So I'll give the context. So this is the road on this side. On the left-hand side this time, there's car park on the front. Yeah, and the entrance is a corner side. So the entrance coming off this side. So you got the reception, you got the office space, you got the lift staircase over here, and you got the room 1, room 2. They share the communal space. It's a more baby rooms mainly. And then you got the bigger rooms here, room 3 and room 4. And they got the upstairs too, right? It's a 2-story building. And you get the kitchen in the middle with dining areas in the middle. And you get the art area, you get a parent room as a mingling area.
Yeah.
And you get the toilets here, an office planning area. So what do you think about this design?
Yeah, I really like that there's this center area where people can, when you pick up kids, like, they might want to have siblings, and if they've got siblings in other rooms or they've got friends in other rooms, there's a little dining area where people are going to end up mingling. So I think that's good. I really like that there's a whole lot of outdoor play area for, I guess, most of the rooms. I can't see room 1 and 2. It looks like they've got doors outdoor to the outdoor, so that must be an outdoor play area there.
It's outdoor play area.
Yeah. So that, like, each of the rooms have their own outdoor area, which is great. There's a big one. There's that big one there as well. I like that there's more room. Yeah, like more rooms for with the parents or the carers as well. It looks like there are more rooms. I don't know what the plan was for the other place. Yeah, I like that there's an art area. So there's a lot more sort of consideration, definitely more consideration into the planning of the layout of this. And I talked about openness. There's a better flow and openness to this plan.
Yes, I agree with you. So lots of issues we talked before are not here. The problems, yeah. So very large kitchen is centrally located. You can easily serve different rooms, and you got a dining area. That the dining area is more for parents and the staff to mingle around. The children can come out to enjoy, to feel how to be an adult using the adult furniture. So it's not always at a lower level. So it's kind of
Yes.
different
Yes.
feeling, helping them, teaching them, to behave themselves in a way, experience. And then every room has direct access to their own play area, even though the play area are joining together without barrier, but they have a direct access. They have external doors to the toilets, and both rooms are connected through various ways. You got the cot area you can run in through. It's my house. I'm wandering around. I'm
Yes.
safe, basically. So, and then they were sharing the facilities here, which is fantastic. You got planning, and you got a public or visitor car toilets, planning area close to the office. You can help out a little bit each other. And upstairs, I haven't talked about. There's a separate quiet area for the staff to rest. And also,
Yes.
this is much decent size. The kitchen.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Need a resting space for staff from screaming children. I totally understand that.
Yeah. So this is a much better design, in my opinion, more attractive to the operators.
Yes.
But we can contribute to different, like the furniture, the interior, and then the opening. There's lots of details we can help out with improve the design. But at the
Yes.
functional layout level, and that is much better results.
Yeah. Yeah. I would much prefer that. Again, and I'm very much an outdoorsy person, so the first thing I look for is is there plenty of room for kids to actually run around and interact and be kids.
The only thing I think they could do better here is they can provide a kind of temporary morning drop or pick up, evening pick up access point. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, that's the part I couldn't see. So is that the only entrance that from
Yeah, on the
the
side. Yeah,
Okay, so when they park, where do they walk?
they have to
They
come
got to
back
walk
up.
around.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah,
and
that's
then
a bit
there's
of a
no
pain.
external staircase to the upstairs in case of emergency.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a lot of
Yeah.
things we can improve it. That's why no perfect solutions.
Yes. Yes.
But that's something that most planners will not look into the internal designs. But we can. But it's important to check that and to make sure architects are doing the good job there, the good jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. No, this has been fun. I like that. I like that live interaction. There
Yeah,
we go.
thank you. And that's all for today, basically.
Excellent, excellent, Hong. Thank you so much for walking us through that. Again, if you're interested in developing childcare centres, Hong is based in Melbourne. However, you are able to assist people across Australia as well.
Correct.
But not only childcare centres, it's medical centres. What else do you do from a planning perspective?
Medical centers, NDIS, senior living, and normal housing. Because even though lots of people doing housing development, but it's one thing that you need to understand what the market wants and how to design better. So that's an important part. We do quite a range of services here.
Yeah, fantastic. So if you've got a site that you want to do a needs analysis, Hong is your person to reach out to. Her contact details are there on that screen. So it's PPC Urban Consulting. You can listen if you missed out on part 1. It's on the Business of Property YouTube page. Make sure you visit and subscribe. So thank you everyone for listening in. Again, listen to part 1 and listen to part 2, and you'll get a much better idea of how you can invest and develop in childcare centres. So thank you so much, Hong, for your time and having you here again. Always an absolute pleasure. I love all the interactions, so that's fabulous. And we'll see you again very, very soon.
Thank you so much, Cheryl, for having me here. And thank you for watching everyone online.
Awesome. Thank you. You take care of yourself. Hit Hong out from ppcurban.com.au.
That's okay. Planning Property Consultant, PPC stands for.
Awesome. Awesome. You take care of yourself and we'll see you. Thanks for joining us. Make sure you all subscribe and visit the YouTube channel, The Business of Property, where you can find all our past Business of Property episodes. And if you found this valuable, please put a comment below and hit the like button so you get informed of when new sessions come up. So until next week, take care, goodbye, and we'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.